I thank him for his work as the ranking member on budget. Mr. Speaker, I'm about to say something that the American people don't want to hear. The swamp is back. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
Gentleman's correct. Members, let's give everybody a courtesy, please. I know it's late. Gentleman may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. The swamp is back. Every day since January 20th, Democrats have sided with their special interest allies and ignored the real needs of the American people. The result is the bill before us today, or should I say tomorrow. Congress won't actually vote on this bill till about 2 a.m. Saturday morning. Why? Because, Mr. Speaker, Democrats are so embarrassed by all the non-COVID waste in this bill that they are jamming it through in the dead of night. We ran the numbers. The amount of money that actually goes to defeating the virus is less than 9%. Less than 9%. So don't call it a rescue bill. Don't call it a relief bill. If you are a friend of the Speaker, you do pretty well under this bill. But for the American people, it is a loser. Let's consider Medicare. Tonight, CBO confirmed that this bill will cause $36 billion in cuts to Medicare starting this year. If you vote for this bill, I want you to go back to your district. Look the seniors in the eye. Look at the hospitals, those who have been working night and day, and tell them why you voted to cut their health benefits. Or consider the blue state bailout. This bill calls for states and local governments to receive $350 billion. Most states are not in financial distress. Nearly half saw an increase in their revenue last year. And some, even including my home state of California, the Speaker's as well, actually has a budget surplus. But none of that money is tied to reopening. Or consider elite institutions, Harvard and others. This bill calls for them to receive hundreds of millions of dollars. But Harvard already has a $40 billion endowment. Compare that to K through 12 education. This bill allocates only $6 billion to help reopen American schools in fiscal year 2021. More than 2/3 of the education funding would not be spent until 2023 or later. Almost every one of this bill's 592 pages includes a liberal pipe dream that predates the pandemic.
Colorado is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different result. That makes the supporters of this legislation, by definition, insane. Reckless spending in this town is what causes inflation. And we cannot continue to increase taxes on the American people and put a target on American energy production while spending a historic $370 billion on Green New Deal initiatives and expect to lower inflation and improve our economy. Remember that so-called bipartisan infrastructure bill? Yeah, we spent $200 billion on Green New Deal initiatives. I guess that was just a down payment on this never-ending theft of American tax dollars. You are sacrificing American families at the altar of climate change. Mr. Speaker, isn't it so? Joe Biden himself said inflation rate is at 0%. So what the heck are we doing here? Why are we passing this so-called Inflation Reduction Act if it's at 0%? Well, in fact, it's the Inflation Enhancement
Gentlewoman's
Act.
time has expired.
And it does the exact opposite of what Americans need right now. This is just another con game by the Democrats, calling something one thing and saying another.
Has expired.
This is making the IRS, which
Gentlewoman's
armed
time
agents
has
larger
expired.
than the Pentagon, the State Department,
Gentlewoman is
the
no
FBI.
longer recognized. The gentleman from Missouri reserves the ballot.
Mr. Speaker.
Robbery on Americans.
How much time do you need?
The gentlewoman is no longer recognized.
How much time do you need?
Your time has expired. The gentleman from Missouri reserves.
I will yield an additional 30 seconds to the gentlelady from Colorado to finish her comments.
Gentleman is recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
This bill hires 87,000 new IRS agents, and they are armed, and the job description tells them that they need to be required to carry a firearm and expect to use deadly force if necessary. Excessive taxation is theft, and the chairman said that we are using the power of the federal government in this bill. You're darn right you are. You're using the power of the federal government for armed robbery on the taxpayers. I can only see why that this was rushed through committee and put on the floor.
Gentlewoman's time is expired.
Gentlewoman's
time is expired. She is no longer recognized. The gentleman from Missouri reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Now let's check the fine print. On page 97, for those of you who've not read it, it hands out health care subsidies to illegal immigrants. On page 347, it fast-tracks $1.5 billion to Amtrak. Now, Amtrak has $1.5 billion from the last package they haven't even spent. On page 306, it gives federal employees up to an extra $21,000 to help cope with virtual schooling. Let me read that so every American understands. If you are a federal employee, you get an extra $21,000 to cope with virtual schooling. Because a lot of federal employees are going to vote for this bill tonight. But if you are one of the millions of parents outside of Washington, outside of the swamp, who are struggling through school closures, including the 1 million mothers who had to quit their jobs to take care of their kids at home with school, and the fathers that quit, you are ignored. And on page 358, it funnels, well, earlier it funneled less, just a little over $100 million, but last night the Rules Committee was able to add more, up to $140 million for a subway tunnel near Speaker Pelosi's district. When you add it all up, the size of this payoff is jaw-dropping. $1.9 trillion in new spending. It is the single most expensive spending bill ever. But will it help people get back to work? No. Will it help students get back in the classroom immediately? No. Will it help get vaccines to those who want it? The answer is no. It doesn't spend a third of the entire cost of the bill for another 2 years, undermining the claim that this bill is so urgent that this money won't be spent for another 2 years. It doesn't have any guardrails to protect against fraud, which has already cost taxpayers tens of billions of dollars, including especially in California. It just throws out money without accountability, even though we are over $1 trillion unspent from the last bill. President Biden promised unity, but Democrats are delivering a one-party rule. Mr. Speaker, based on the facts, the Democrat spending bill is too costly, too corrupt, and just too liberal for this country. To my colleagues who say this bill is bold, I say it's bloated. To those who say it's urgent, I say it's unfocused. To those who say it is popular, I say it is entirely partisan and has the wrong priorities. Republicans will support whatever is needed to get America back to work, back to school, and back to health. After 12 months of struggling, suffering, and sacrificing, that's what Americans want, what they need and what they deserve. That's why Republicans will introduce a motion to recommit to bolster the resources of families can access to help their children cope with the emotional stress of school closures. And it won't be for parents who just work for the federal government. It'll be for all American parents. In every single district, if you watch, the anxiety, the fear for children have risen. To the 3 million children that now mark a year that they haven't been in the classroom. Our proposal would shift the $140 million from Speaker Pelosi's subway to grants that would be used for mental health services for children. It puts children first, not the swamp. Democrats have conveniently ignored the education and mental health crisis affecting our children, but failing to address it is unacceptable. Families deserve answers. Tonight they will finally get it. Our colleagues, it's a very clear and concise question you have before you. If you vote for the bill, you're cutting Medicare. You're cutting your hospitals. You're cutting your health providers with your vote. If you vote against the motion to recommit what you changed, you are picking $140 million that you just added to last night to a subway tunnel just outside of the Speaker's district. So who do you pick? All American parents to give them the grants and the resources they need to cope with their children's anxiety, the rise of suicide, and the mental health? Or do you think that subway is really appropriate right here, right now? Make a decision. Is the swamp back, or the hardworking American taxpayers come first? It's an easy question. It's easy for me to decide, and I think it's easy for America to decide as well. I yield back.
Members are